Sega.
Back in the 90s, Sega was one of the biggest names out there and were one of the leading console manufacturers known for the tons of experimental and beloved games. And as a kid, Sega were one of my favourite developers with many iconic titles like Sonic, Streets of Rage and Shinobi. They're still doing strong with series like the Yakuza, Valkyria Chronicles and the Sonic games. But recently they brought back some of the old series like Sakura Wars, Space Channel 5, Panzer Dragoon, Wonder Boy and Streets of Rage. The latter three developed by smaller, passionate teams. Heck, even Alex Kidd, the old company mascot, is coming back with a remake. With the recent revival of some of the older franchises, it got me thinking of other Sega franchises I would love to come back in some shape or form, like a remaster or a new game in a series, and have a gallery of franchises under their sleeves that haven't seen a release in years, or in some cases, decades, and have the potential to turn out amazing. It's time...
Rise from your grave.
Besides their home consoles in the 80s and 90s, Sega was, and still is, well known for the arcade games. In fact, when I think of arcades, Sega is one of the first that come to mind. One of these arcade classics I wanted to see in today's generation is Space Harrier. Space Harrier is an on-rail shooter originally released in 1985 for the arcades, set in the Fantasy Zone, which was this weird, uncanny sci-fi place inspired by artist Roger Dean. Space Harrier had many ports since its original release, including one for the Sega Ages series on the Switch. But I would love to see a brand new game with modern designs, like an online leaderboard, and maybe with a cool synthwave visual style to go along with its wacky setting. There was a project I was getting into years ago called Striker Blazinger that was inspired by Space Harrier, but I haven't heard anything about it for a while now. We've seen throughout the years that bringing old school games like Pac-Man into the modern era can turn out well thanks to the digital market, and it would be great to see the same treatment with Space Harrier. I wanted to see a new game in the Streets of Rage series for a long time, and I'm glad .emu, Lizardcube and Dark Quest games delivered, and I hope we see more Streets of Rage games in the future. Streets of Rage wasn't Sega's only beat 'em up series though, and it wasn't their first either, as their first was better in the arcades and then later ported to the Mega Drive with Golden Axe. Golden Axe is the medieval equivalent to Streets of Rage, but stands out from its younger brother with its main features, riding on monsters, and the magic system, which can be upgraded with the few potions collected in the stages. The first Golden Axe was, at the time, impressive, but isn't really worth playing today, especially compared to other beat-em-up titles. It had a few spin-offs, another arcade game, 2 sequels in the 90s, and a 2008 hack and slash game that wasn't received well, but hasn't really returned since then. Sega of Australia did pitch a prototype for a remake of Golden Axe, but unfortunately, after finishing up their enjoyable Castle using game, the studio closed down. I really enjoy the beat 'em up genre, so I would like to see Sega tackle Golden Axe again with a modern touch, like online play and 4-player co-op. Lizardcube and Dark Quest games would be a perfect choice. Either that or release the arcade exclusive, and perhaps the best Golden Axe game according to fans, Return of Death Adder to consoles. Ninjas! Who doesn't love them? From spies and assassins in ancient Japan to the popular boom in media in the 70s and 80s, ninjas have gave birth to some of the most beloved pieces of entertainment in history. Some of my favourite characters are ninjas, like the Turtles, Stride Harrier and Kaki. In the late 80s, Sega released their own ninja game, Shinobi, released in the arcades, and during the 80s and early 90s, Shinobi was one of Sega's most popular franchises, spanning multiple sequels and side games, all about old school challenges, patience, and fighting some of the most bizarre bosses. Revenge of Shinobi was one of my first Sega games I played as a kid, and I played a good chunk of the games since then, from Shinobi 3, Shinobi on the PlayStation 2, and Scenery on the 3DS. While Sega's Ninja Icon hasn't seen the light of day since 2011, with the 3DS installment and a few guest appearances, there have been a decent chunk of Ninja games, like the Messenger, that have tried to capture the essence of Sega's Ninja mascot. If they brought back Scenery back to this decade, they could go for the 3D hack and slash route that they previously did for the PlayStation 2 era to make it stand out. Most of us know who Sonic Team is. There have been releasing loads of Sonic games ever since 1991, but Sonic Team were also known for creating the Fantasy Star series, Nights into Dreams, and Billy Hatcher. However, the most obscure game, and the one I'm talking about, is Burning Rangers. Some of you may have heard of Burning Rangers, as the main theme plays in one of the missions in Project Cross Zone 2, and it had its own course in Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, which was the first time I heard of it, and after listening to that groovy music, it got me intrigued on what Burning Rangers was. The game is about space firefighters named the Burning Rangers, and the goal is to save civilians from blazing buildings, which sounds right up my alley in terms of how crazy the synopsis is. Unfortunately, Burning Rangers was only released at the end of the Saturn's life. It's incredibly expensive, and it never got a re-release, making it the reason why I would like to see this game get a port or firm-blown remake. No, due to how hard emulation Saturn games are, I doubt it. One of my favourite consoles growing up was the Nintendo GameCube, and one of the first games I had on the GameCube was Super Monkey Ball, a game where you took Marble Madness, put a monkey into the ball, and add the insanity and speed by 100. The first two games were some of the best games for the GameCube, with its insane speed, challenges, and the wacky party games. My favourite was Monkey Card It. You might be thinking, why is Super Monkey Ball on this list? Banana Blitz HD came out last year. And yeah, it did, but Banana Blitz was a port of the Wii game of the same name, and Banana Blitz was the game that started the decline of the quality of the series with its easy difficulty, level design, and adding boss battles for the sake of it. It was also the first game in the series that came out for a while, as the last game in the series before then was on the PS Vita in 2014. Basically, I just really want a Monkey Ball game that captures the feel and the level designs of the first two games. According to the director of Banana Blitz HD, Masahiro Suesaki, in a Crunchyroll interview, he stated, 13 years ago was before I joined Sega. I'm really grateful for the fans who still support the Monkey Ball series after all these years, and who motivate me to create only the best of them. And of course, I'm aware that most of the favourite titles are the first two games. If there is enough support for Banana Blitz HD, this will open doors for remaking the first two games, or even a whole new title to the series. I am not sure what the sales are for the recent game, but I've been hearing rumours that a new Monkey Ball game is in development, so there is still a chance we can see a new game in the series. It would also be neat if they add a level editor feature. I would instantly buy it if that was the case. Like Super Monkey Ball, this Sega franchise is still technically going on, but from my research, each game in the last 20 years or so are very different from each other in terms of gameplay, setting, and even developers, with the only noticeable resemblance is the word Signin in the title. It started out as Signin in the Darkness in 1991 as a dungeon crawler RPG, but the majority of people in the West will probably know its turn-based strategy sequel, Signin Force, released in 1993, developed by now named Camelot, who also worked on the Golden Sun and Mario sports games. The Signin Force series were considered some of the best turn-based strategy RPGs. It had 2 games for the Mega Drive, 3 Gaiden games for the Game Gear, and a remake of the first 2 Gaiden games for the Mega CD. There were also Signin Force 3, released in 1998 on the Sega Saturn, which was made into 3 volumes and are considered some of the best Saturn games. However, only the first volume was ever released in the West, possibly due to that the Saturn was practically dead in 1998 in Western territories, and the Dreamcast was making its appearance around that time. With the recent popularity and sales with the Fire Emblem games in the last decade, I would love if Sega tackles another Signin Force game in the style of tactical RPGs, hopefully getting Camelot to work on these games. I'm a huge fan of the Fire Emblem games, so if Sega announces a return to the Signin's tactical RPG roots, I will be pretty excited. Sega has a decent size of RPG titles. You have the Signin Force games, which I just mentioned, the Fantasy Star games, and then you have Skies of Arcadia, released on the Dreamcast in 2000 in Japan and the US, and in 2001 in Europe. Set in the world above the clouds, you follow the story of Weiss and his best friend Aika, who are part of the Blue Roads, a group of air pirates who resist the powerful and corrupt Valuan Empire. Later on, they rescue a girl named Fina, who was held prisoner by the Empire, and help her in a mission to find the Mood Crystals, before the Valuans get a hold of them. And that's the basic synopsis, but Skies of Arcadia has a lot of world building, charm, likable characters, and excellent music that just make it stand out in Sega's library and the RPG genre. Unfortunately, Skies of Arcadia apparently didn't sell very well on the Dreamcast. A director's cut was planned for the GameCube and the PlayStation 2 as Skies of Arcadia Legends, but unfortunately only the GameCube version was released, and yet the Dreamcast version, Legends didn't sell too well either. There have been multiple talks of a sequel, including an IGN interview with the executive producer Noriyoshi Obi and an interview with the producer Ryoto Kodama, both saying that a sequel was in the works at some point, but due to developers sifting throughout the years and other projects, it never came to be. No, despite no sequel or enhancement of the original in recent years, Sega hasn't forgotten it, as Weiss, Aika and Fina were playable units in Valkyria Chronicles. Weiss was playable in Sonic All-Stars Racing Transform, plus the developers of the original game expressed interest in bringing back the Blue Roads. The Dreamcast classic has gained a cult following, and with the recent boom of ports and remakes of cult classics, there may be a chance that Skies of Arcadia could get a fresh coat of paint. I haven't talked a lot about rhythm names on my channel, but it's a genre I enjoy a lot, despite me sucking at them. Sega has, and still makes rhythm games like Space Channel 5 and the Hatsune Miku games, but something about the Mexican Sombrero Monkey just appeals to me more, with its colourful and wacky presentation. Samba de Amido is a rhythm game that mainly consists of Latin music and various cover songs that uses motion-controlled maracas. It first appeared in the arcades in 1999, then to the Dreamcast in 2000, developed by Sonic Team, and then ported to the Wii in 2008 by Gearbox Software, using the Wiimote and nunchucks. With Samba de Amido relying heavily on motion controls, the Switch is a perfect fit, with its Joy-Cons that recaptured the feel of the maracas with its HD rumble and gyroscope motion sensor. The portability for the Switch would also benefit the game, as you could bring it to group gatherings and parties. In a Eurogamer interview with Sonic Team game designer and producer Sun Nakamura, he says, "I really want to make it. This is coming from someone who had to make physical items you had to buy and plug it into your console in order to play Samba de Amido at home. When the Wii came out, there was only one Wiimote, and you had to buy another one. You could still do it, but it's a hurdle to get over. The first time I saw the Switch, I thought, oh my god, this is it. You don't have to buy another peripheral. You don't need to buy another controller. I'm really interested in that." The Dreamcast and the Wii versions had DLC too, with additional tracks, and you could do the same for the Switch too, adding new tracks to keep the game alive. Heck, you could even give the game amiibo functionality. Imagine putting the Mario amiibo into the game, you and your Jump Up Superstar.
Here we go, off the rails. Don't you know it's time to raise our sails? It's freedom like you never knew.
Or add the Sonic amiibo and you get given yen. or even the Johto amiibo to unlock your surprise. The Dreamcast was Sega's last home console before jumping shift to become a third-party company, and they went out with a bang. They made some of the most creative games with unique concepts like Crazy Taxi, Space Channel 5, Shenmue, and of course,
Jet Set Radio!
Around the time of the stream sports games, Jet Set Radio stood out from the rest of its rivals with its colourful cast of characters, and being one of the first games to use cel shading, which gave off that graffiti look that complements the gameplay and the themes of rebellion. While a lot of 3D polygon games around that time have aged visually, Jet Set Radio still looks good thanks to the cel shading technique. It had a sequel on the Xbox in 2002 titled Jet Set Radio Future, which I hear is great, if not better than the original. The first game got a digital re-release around 2012, but after that, nothing much, besides guest appearances and merchandises. It would be amazing if Future got a port for modern systems too. Besides Jet Set Radio and the PlayStation games, I cannot think of any extreme sports games around that time that is still being talked about today. The games have a huge cult following to this day, from fan arts, cosplays, and heck, even someone made an actual Jet Set radio station using the DJ Professor K persona. The series has also inspired many developers in some shape or form, with small independent games like Hover and Youthful Lead Blaze, to even the AAA stuff with Insomniac's Sunset Overdrive. Back in 2016, Sega of Japan did a poll of what franchises people want to come back, and the results showed that Jet Set Radio was the second most voted franchise, only being beaten by Sakura Wars, which has now got a new game on the PlayStation 4. Sega also did another survey in 2018 on what games people would have liked to see in the Sega Ages series, and Jet Set Radio was voted as the number one game. These show that people truly love these games, and as someone who considers Jet Set Radio as one of the best games of the Dreamcast, I would love to see a new title. When I think of Sega, the first thing that comes to mind is Sonic, and then Streets of Rage. But coming in third is one of the pioneers that changed the fighting game scene, Virtua Fighter. While Virtua Fighter wasn't the first 3D game, it is considered the father of 3D fighting games, and contributed a lot to 3D gaming. Virtua Fighter's co-creator CC Ishii even went on to create the most popular fighting game franchise, Tekken, a year later. Unintentionally, it also contributed for Sony to turn the PlayStation into a 3D gaming system, and helped Sony in the long run as one of the leading console manufacturers to this day. With the series that did a lot for the gaming industry, it's kind of a shame that there hasn't been a new game since 2012 with Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown, an expansion of Virtua Fighter 5, a game released in 2006 in Japan and worldwide in 2007. The arcade version of Final Showdown was in Yakuza 6 and Judgment. Some of the cast were playable in Dead or Alive 5, and the poster boy Akira is an assist trophy in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, a game representing some of the most iconic characters. With the popularity of the competitive fighting game scene over the decade, and with the series still going strong like Tekken, Street Fighter, and Guilty Gear, I'm surprised Sega hasn't brought back Virtua Fighter. Fighting games are one of my favourite video game genres alongside 2D platformers and RPGs, with its competitive and addicting gameplay that I could put on for an hour or two. Out of any Sega series I would love to come back, it's Virtua Fighter. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I would like to know what Sega franchises you would like to see.